supposed to be till 10:30, then a break. I haven't worked the timing on this one.
We started a little late too, so if it goes
Then
over
we'll
a little,
go over it.
yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm in roughly the right place.
Yeah.
So let's dig a little deeper. You can take an anthropological approach and look at what a customer has to do as a process to buy or use something. They have to define something. Simplified planning, for example, in Weight Watchers does that with planning tools, don't they? You go on a website or you get a booklet, you can chart everything, you can plan your meal for the week, how many points, what you're going to do, and that's a benefit. It may not fit any one of your businesses, but some portion of this will. Locating stuff, finding stuff. Can they find your product? How easy it is to find. Prepare, set up, ease of adjustment, adjustable levers and stuff. How many of you on your computer put on new software? And Apple, for instance, will go through your computer and say, are you ready to put on the new system? They'll check that you have enough memory and this and that on your computer before you screw it up completely yourself. So you can test the system. You can prevent a problem. I can't remember what the example was now. You can get monitoring going on simultaneously. Feedback systems is part of what you're doing. You put feedback mechanisms in your plant system so you could always trace with a chip how much water the plant is getting over time and let someone look at all their plants, couldn't you? Wouldn't it be a benefit to your system? Automatic improvements, software updates. Simplify bandage removal. I mean, taking a bandage off of a wound, especially if it's a burn, is a critical thing. There's a whole company getting started over an M2D2 that I had my graduate class working with some years ago, that he was spinning a particular kind of silk nanomaterial, and one of the characteristics was that you could infuse the material with medicines, but you could also lift it off the burn without the burn tearing the scar and the scabs off, which meant you didn't start all over every time you replace the bandage. That's what happens to burn victims. And so something like that is really critical as well. How do you get rid of stuff at the end? It's critical sometimes. You know, recently looking at RV trailers, I'm retired now and have to look at them at least. Came to the conclusion it wasn't worth buying. But if you look around your neighborhoods and drive around, how do people get rid of RV trailers? They can't sell them because they end up having low value. They sit in people's backyards rotting. And so, you know, how do you get rid of it? I mean, getting rid of stuff is critical disposal issues. I don't know if any of you have that, but it's an issue. So to help you get some of this down a little further, I put up something that appeared in the Harvard Business Review. And what it tried to do here was look at a buyer utility map, and I gave you a copy of that in here. And if it's hard to read, well, a little bit. Notice across the top we have purchase, delivery, use, supplements, maintenance, and disposal, which are what a buyer has to do with anything they buy. And then you have utility levers of customer productivity, simplicity, convenience, risk, fun and image, environmental friendliness. Let's look at an example of that. So on purchasing, I can't read my own stuff here. How long does it take to find the product that you need? Is the place of purchase attractive and accessible? How rapidly? How secure is the transaction environment? Now again, each one of these doesn't necessarily apply to your business, but some of these will, obviously. How long does it take to get the product delivered? Well, in your case with dentures, delivery time is critical. That's a value issue. Unpack and install the product. How costly and difficult. IKEA, in a sense, is making a whole thing out of this, is trading off delivery and assembly for cost, isn't it? Instead of you paying a moving company to bring furniture to you and have it all set up, you're paying much less because you build it yourself, save your money, and everybody, different customer segments, have different value on that. Training, expert assistance. How do you store your product? Is there value in storage? An interesting example of that one, think about tools used by mechanics that fix airplane engines. A company came along, built a toolbox, the sliding boxes, big red ones, but each tool has its own insert. So it goes in a particular place in a foam insert, or rubber insert, whatever it was. Because what's the most dangerous thing that you can do for an airplane mechanic? Is leave a tool in the engine, right? So the routine for an airline mechanic is get done with their tools, put every tool back into this case. If there's any empty slot, it says a screwdriver was left someplace in that engine, which would cause the plane to crash. And so there's even value in storage. And companies have made a company out of creating storage systems. The other thing you can do is put too many bells and whistles on a product. I did a lot of work with medical devices, particularly pacemakers, in the early days of pacemakers. Had a client in that field. And they'd be ending up delaying getting their product in the market because the engineers wanted to put more bells and whistles on. And every time they delayed in product introduction, they lost millions and millions of dollars. So it's better to get the product out simple to start with. You can always add a way to get it to the market first. Do you need other products and services? You need a hot dog bun to get the hot dog working. How costly? How much time do they take? Are they easy to obtain? What kind of maintenance is required? How costly? What do you do with waste? Legal, environmental issues, disposal issues, all of that create value in one way or the other for you. So think about all that kind of stuff. Going down the side, what are the biggest blocks to customer productivity? What are the biggest blocks to simplicity of using your product? People like simple. In which stage are the biggest blocks to convenience? Are there risks involved? Fun and image. Fun is fun. Why do people go shopping? It's the environment they're shopping in that's critical to them, isn't it? It's an emotional kind of thing. It's not just pure logic in engineering. Biggest blocks to environmental friendliness. So all of those are critical issues. So this part of the exercise says, take out your buyer utility map and start thinking about your product with these different aspects of it. Take about 5 minutes here to think about the buyer's experience cycle and utility levers. Is there something in here that as you look through this that you can think is different about your product from what's taking place today, helps them get their job done differently? What is it? Is there some new box in here that you can fill in that you didn't think about before. Yeah, there's a lot there. If you go through each one, so I'm only giving you 5 minutes to do it, but it's a way to start thinking about utility again, and just another way of saying, let's expand. When you say what you're providing to your customer, you want to keep expanding on your understanding of that, because when you start doing interviews with your customer, as you've been doing, you can start asking questions that you didn't ask before, probing areas that no one else has probed. That gets you to having a unique selling proposition, which is your goal. Let's go back to jobs to get done. The jobs to get done, most of you put in the first category here, which is very functional. Solve a specific problem, perform a specific task. But you really need to think about this one as a process, which is this stuff, gives you a better process, looking at process those. But all of this does not exist in a psychological vacuum or a social vacuum. What social jobs are you helping your customer get done? Are they trying to look good? Are they trying to gain power, status? All of these human pieces are part of this. When you think about activities, if you look at social science, George Holman's had something called a book called The Human Group, published right now. It's, gotta say, 50 years ago. But if you think about any activity that someone's going to engage in, at least purposeful activity, they have an activity. That activity usually involves interactions with other people, doesn't it? So somebody's got to play a game or do something, but they're not doing it alone. They're doing it in a context of required interactions, and they've got to do it with certain kind of feelings involved. They have to do it. They can't want to hurt the other person in your game. Something of that sort. But coming out of this is a whole emergent system, an informal system of the same people who might do your interactive playing together, starts forming a social bond between the parents, because they have to talk to each other while they're at the game or arrange stuff. That creates a social interaction, and social sentiments around that becomes an informal network around your formal activities. All of that becomes absolutely critical when you're putting your business together, to think about all of that, because that may be your differentiator from everybody else. How you pull that together, whether you put, for example, a calendar to share rides or share stories or support groups or all of that, might lock people into a system. Now you own these customers forever because you've created their social network for them. And how do you charge for this? Well, you'll have to start figuring that out, because they'll be willing to pay, because there's value there. And so these are the kind of things that you have to figure out as you're doing this kind of work. And I think you're starting to experience, this doesn't happen in 5 minutes, it doesn't happen overnight. Your starting idea of what you think somebody needs is just a starting point. And as you spend your next few years learning about your customer, you learn more and more and more and more. And when you get bored, you sell your business and start a new problem. So, you're not going to want to do it forever, right? To become a serial entrepreneur. So one moves to the next. All right. What emotional jobs are you helping your customer get done? Feel good, security, Those things play an important role. Other basic needs, communication, self-actualization, whatever. Do these things differ in different contexts? At home versus driving, breakfast versus dinner, selling it to a big company versus a small company. All these contexts will make a difference in what you do. A small university versus a big university in terms of, you probably are much more needed in a big university than small. But each one of them would require a different kind of system, because the small one, people are ready for it to know each other, but how can you help them break down barriers, where the big one, there's a lot more finding taking place. And I'm just coming up with stuff out of the top of my head because I don't know your stuff. What about pain? What does your customer find too costly? Too much time, too much money, requires substantial effort. I think your example there of thinking about organic certification, right? If you can make that difference for your customer, you've got a real differentiator. Save somebody 3 years, what do you revolutionize the game, don't you? What makes your customer feel bad? Frustrations, annoyances. I mean, those are the things that you guys are selling, is the frustration and annoyances, aren't you? Like what happens if you feel isolated? You're not part of what everybody else is celebrating. So, if you can find a way to, hey, experience America, come to Thanksgiving dinner at our house kind of thing, it's an experience. Or, hey, we're having this kind of a celebration in our culture, why don't you guys celebrate with us, learn about us. What current solutions are underperforming? Lacks of features, performance, malfunctioning, negative social costs, loss of faith, trust, power, something of that sort. What keeps your customer awake at night? That's a standard question. Common mistakes. What's keeping them from adopting solutions? So in essence, what you really got to be doing is exploring these pains and gains with savings. What does the customer expect that would go beyond expectations? How do current solutions delight your customers? Specific features, performance. So if you take an angioplasty balloon from a company and say, what's the desired outcome for segment, whatever, you minimize restenosis, occurring blockage, minimize this, minimize that, blah, blah, blah. How important are all of these? They're getting important scores from these people quantifying it, and how satisfied they are. Well, if you simply do opportunity equals importance, 9.5, plus importance minus satisfaction, so it's 9.5 minus 3.2, which is 6.3 plus 9.5 gives you 15.8. This is another way to start quantifying what is the most important, next most important, so on and so forth. Because that's what you're trying to solve, isn't it? The most important problem. The other thing to remember in all of this is people buy you for your strengths in spite of your weaknesses. So if you're solving a need that they have that no one else is solving, that's your strength, even though you may have downsides to some of your solutions, if it's the most important thing to them, they'll still buy from you. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So trying to understand your uniqueness and how it fits the customer and what customer group is critical. So we've got about 10 minutes here to finish up on our schedule, on this part of it. So I'm going to give you another exercise here, and this can be meant to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to ask the two of you to get together on this one, because I think it's more fun to do in teams of two than it is in teams of one. So the exercise really could be cheaper too, because what we found, if you look at price performance curves, people come in either lower, less performance, take things out, sell it cheaper, take things out that people don't care about, and can be cheaper with it, or they come in at the higher end, adding new features, benefits, and things that people never had before. So you can go either way with an existing market. Resegmenting is really finding some sort of niche or group that hasn't been well served in the past. And in both of these cases, the customer knows how to use the product generally. And the manufacturers know how to use the product. And so you can say new and improved, but it's, you know, if it falls into that category, it's so new and improved. A new market, completely new market, really creates sort of a new class of customers. You're not really competing. If you want to read any literature in this area, if you read something about blue ocean strategy, how many of you heard of the term blue ocean strategy? That's really saying you're going where no one else has gone before, and you really don't have competitors. An example of that might be instead of companies buying an airplane, somebody comes up with the idea of sharing the airplane, and you buy, you know, sort of a timeshare on the airplane kind of concept. So that's a very different cost structure for companies. It's a different game, and it changes the game compared to what the game was in the past. And so now airplane people who are selling planes can't sell a whole plane anymore. It's a different kind of sale to sell something else, and it creates a kind of problem. So that's one definitional difference, and it will make a difference. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that at the moment, but I just wanted to make sure I covered that so when you see it in the blank book, you recognize, you've seen it before at least. There's another whole class here of classifying customers, and this comes out of a book called Crossing the Chasm by Moore. And this is used heavily in high-tech industries. It's been around 25 years, 30 years, maybe longer than that. But it's still the language of industry today, so I thought I ought to make you familiar with it. And there's some important stuff here. What you're really doing is you're classifying buyers of a technology into different categories. A techie, how many of you were the first in your block to own an iPhone or something? Or the first in your block to be on Twitter? Or the first in your block to do something that's new and different? First to try an app? How many of you are those kind of people? Anybody? Always trying the new thing, the beta versions of stuff? Yeah, you can admit it. That's fine. But what do techie type people want? One, they want the truth. They want to talk to other techies. First wants to get new stuff, and it's got to be free, right? Because all technology should be free for everyone to try. In a sense, you have to think of people that are techies as the beachheads. If you're going into a company, you will find these people. They become an early reference, and they're debugging test bed. Interesting thing about a techie is they never have money to buy from you, because they want it for free, of course. But when you start trying to sell the product, they have the power to kill the sale by saying it doesn't work. And that's where the real power comes in. They're saying, oh, this doesn't make sense. You know, Fusion will never work. Don't bother spending more money on it. On the other hand, they can say, hey, yeah, it's pretty neat stuff, and people take a further look. But it's never enough to buy. The next group of people you get in a company are what's called visionaries. visionaries, they're there to match the technological opportunity to a strategic business opportunity. They buy projects. They don't buy your product. They buy projects. Very critical for you, for example, going to a dental group or something. They're going to want to play with it. They can see the potential to try one. You know, they'll buy a couple from you under contract, but it's not going to be an ongoing sale. It's going to be a project. Let's see if it works. Let's work together, do whatever. That's a different kind of customer. You don't want to think about them as being your long-term customer, because they're not. Be very careful about that one. They want to translate this technology into a visible product in the company. They're usually well-positioned. They're fairly powerful in a company. They're been slated and known to bring in new stuff. That's their job, to bring in new stuff. They've got the charisma to sell within the organization, but they're driven by a business dream, not your technological dream. They're going to test whether your product makes sense from a business results perspective in their company. That's what their job is about. You know, your technology is just a means to that end, and that's how they're going to see you. So, we want to, when you start thinking about this in terms of a normal curve, 1 or 2% of the people out there in companies might be techies. Another 10% might be visionaries, or a few percent might be visionaries, but you still haven't hit the 90 percentile group yet, have you? So what we want to do is contrast the early market, which is visionaries, to the mainstream market, which are pragmatists. The visionaries are very intuitive, they support revolution, they're contrarian, they're willing to do something different, they're willing to take risks, they're motivated by opportunities, they seek the possible. You'll love those kind of people, right? Who's the mainstream market? Start dealing with the damn purchasing managers now. The purchasing managers and the other pragmatists in a company, operations people, they got to keep that line running, and they don't want to experiment with that line because their life depends on that line running. That's their job to get done, is to keep it running, and they don't like experiments. That can stop the line, screw it up, do whatever. They're going to be very analytical. They're going to support evolution, fairly conformist. They're going to watch, did other people adopt your product before I adopted it? You're going to want to see an adoption path. They're managing risks. They're motivated by solving a problem. You have to prove to them they need that new car, and you got to show them the dollars savings on something like that. They'll pursue the probable, not the possible. And probability means your high percentage that it's going to work. They require a total proven solution. If you can't provide everything yourself, you have to have partners to provide the rest of it right up front. You're not going to say, oh, you have to solve this yourself and this yourself. No. It's got to be turnkey when you present it to them and they won't buy it. Does that make sense to y'all? You probably haven't seen these categorizations before, but they're important conceptualizations of who you're dealing with out there. And if you think you're selling to a pragmatist who's going to buy lots of your product, but it's only a visionary, you know, you're getting your inventory built up, and this guy's going to buy 2, not 2,000. And you're stuck with all that inventory until you prove to enough of these visionaries that it's working. So be careful when you're dealing with visionaries. They'll almost 100% use the word, let's try this as a project. But that's okay, you want to hear that word, because if you're hearing that from somebody and it's a project and they're buying, you're part of that buying cycle now. It's the trial, and you want those kind of trials, so that's good. but just have to know who you're dealing with. And you have to make sure that at that stage where you're trying to get into a practical solution that will be repeatable. Businesses are recipes. Production lines are recipes. They want to repeat, consistency. That candy bar has to have that simple layer of chocolate be exactly the same every time. Because if there's pinholes in that chocolate, it's a quality problem. It'll go stale and cause a problem. So you need consistency.
Yes, this is just a quick question. Would the early market would be an opportunity for you to actually test your first versions of solutions? Would it be whether your mainstream market, ultimately your customers?
Well,
they may not willing to kind of try out your products, allow you to actually learn from them and basically create a better product or more closer to the ideal one that basically.
Well, yeah, you're doing that and you're finding out in reality how your product's going to work in a practical sense in a practical environment. But it's only a project. They're not ordering 1,000 from you, they're ordering 1. And it's not, they're making no commitments whatsoever. When you get to the other side of this, the mainstream market, there's longer term commitment there. They're changing a production line to fit your machine in there or to do it totally differently in the future. So if you're gonna put, they may try, one dentist or group may try your stuff with one machine and see how it works with a couple of key patients, but they're not changing their whole system. They're not getting rid of their other suppliers because you came in. They're gonna go with what they're doing. They're gonna try it, see what the results are, see if they make money on it, see what people think about it. They're getting feedback, but you're at least getting feedback in a practical kind of environment that you're gonna see real stuff. It's not just someone talking about what they want. You're gonna get feedback from users and so on. We'll talk about who you get feedback from in a moment.
Based on the feedback you get from the visionaries, how do you project your sales in the mainstream market?
You're not going to project your sales from that in any way, shape, or form yet. There are adoption curves called vast adoption curves that you can look at for certain kinds of products. It's pretty sophisticated stuff that I don't want to get into at the moment. But you don't want to start predicting volume out of this with any of this stuff. This is still at the experiment stage. Think of it as a test factory or something. You're not going. Maybe you can spend $50,000 on a project without having permission from anybody. If you're senior VP, that may go up to 100, 150. At some point, your board member and one of the owners will you may have unlimited expense ability. So you'll need to know with what you're selling who can improve something like that. Because it's going to tell you who you have to sell to, doesn't it? These are your customers. You've got to figure out how your customer operates their business. If you're selling a plant thing to me, hey, I can spend, pull out my wallet and give you $10 for your device. If you're going to a farmer who has 500,000 acres and doing all sorts of organic farming, well, who in that organization is buying? How much can they spend? And the higher the number is, obviously the longer and more difficult the selling process will be, or complex the selling process will be. So you've got to understand who the economic buyer is. Their focus is the bottom line of the organization, but it's not just cost savings. They are looking at return on investment. They will spend money if it makes money for them. Now, when you're going to some of your clients, in a sense, maybe I better use your example. You talked about having, foreign students, regular students, and organizations. But if you want to get it into UMass Lowell, don't you have to go to Dean of Students? Don't you have to go to a whole group of different people in that organization? Think about the people who did the feeding the hungry students last year or the year before. What was it?
SOS.
SOS. And are you familiar with their? It was an interesting project where they were getting people who had meal tickets who weren't using the meals for whatever reason to donate that meal to the program, and then they could help students who were hungry, who didn't have a meal ticket, couldn't afford it, get meals. But their buying group included the Dean of Students, included ARA, who runs the food services. They had to have a whole complex group of people that they had to deal with throughout the entire organization to sell each one of them before this thing could become a reality. So you really need to take your organization apart that you're selling to understand who you're really dealing with. Whether it's in a city, like you guys may have to go to a city to sell it to be the city of Lowell sports program for handicapped kids or something like that would be.
We're doing the Merrimack Valley as a whole.
Or Merrimack Valley, whatever. But there are going to be political organizations there, chambers of commerce, what have you, that you're going to have to find out who's who and what's what, because they're all going to influence these sales. And these are things that you're going to have to take apart. And you're going to find out who can actually put money in my pocket at the end of the day. Is it a organization like, I won't say Red Cross, but
I know what you mean.
pardon?
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? I don't. I know what I mean, but I can't get it out. I'm old. Getting older every day. So they asked, what will be the return on this investment? How will this impact our organization? Growth and profitability, future opportunities. Well, where do you find the economic buyer for this sale? Is it a big dollar sale or a small dollar sale? The bigger the amount that has to be spent, the higher up you have to go in the organization. What are business conditions? Things looking rosy? Hey, we let lower people make decisions. We're in the midst of a recession. We're watching every dollar, every decision goes higher up in the organization. Do they know you? Do they don't know you? You know, if you've been working with them, yeah, it's easy to make a decision. Doing work with Keebler, I mean, I ended up, over the years, walking in the front door. They never stopped me at the front desk. I walked to the president's office and sat down if we didn't have someone in there. If we had a project, anybody in that organization at the director level and below could do a project with me for $30,000 to $50,000 without getting permission from anybody. If it got a little bigger than that, we'd have to go one level up if it got it bigger. But everybody, if it were bigger, wanted to know anyways. They'd probably be involved. But I've been dealing with them for 10 years. And so it's easy to do that kind of thing. The first day you walk in, you ain't getting past the front desk. And so you have to build up that trust over time with clients. And what's your experience with this kind of a product in the past? Do they know what they're dealing with, or is it so brand new they have no idea? And everybody has to sort of get more involved if you're bringing something new in that could destroy the existing relationships. I mean, you're bringing in a new material being printed out, and they have all these established relationships with their vendors, don't they? If you mess up those relationships, that's risky for them. What if the vendor says, you deal with this one, I will never sell you anything again, so you better ready to do 100% turnover to that process rather than some of this and some of that, because I got enough clients I won't deal with you. They may threaten that way. Everybody's looking for leverage. So where is this decision being made in the organization is the question. Let's compare that kind of person, an economic buyer, with the users. These people, their role is to make a judgment of how this product or service will work on their job that they have to get done. Notice now, it's not just one person's job to get done, but you may have to satisfy a dozen people in that organization, all who have a job to get done, who are all looking for schedule, quality assurance, typically multiple buyers. And what is my business result going to be if we as a company adopt this new process or do this or whatever? How is it going to affect us? And you're gonna find that you've got people who for you, and you're gonna have people who are in you, as they say. Because you're messing up their job, you're messing up their power. This becomes, you're putting something new into a social environment, and because you're doing that, you're creating chaos in the organization. It may be a benefit to the company, but it may be a personal loss rather than a win for some individuals. They have to sit someplace else, they don't get to interact with whoever they interacted with in the past. Lots of bad things can happen because of a change in an organization. And so you've got to be watching for all that stuff with whatever you're doing. Let's talk about another buying influence. This is the technical buyer. This person is a gatekeeper. Their role is to screen out. They're concerned with measurable, quantifiable aspects. With your dental product, you're going to have some engineer or materials person being looked at your material versus the material that's being used currently. Is it safe? Is it durable? Is it, A, B, C, D? They're going to have a whole bunch of technical specs that the old material matched that you're going to have to match or justify the difference of. And their role is not to say to buy you. Their only role that they have is to say you're not qualified to sell to us because your material doesn't meet spec. The rays on your machine are too broad, they're going to burn the patient to death rather than kill the cancer. They're the physicist who measures that kind of thing. Or they may be the purchasing manager that says, you're too small, we need to go into production with this, we need 5,000 units a month, and there's no way in the world that you can supply and have the finances to be able to pull off 5,000 units a month. And therefore, as a company, you're not qualified to sell to us, or we're not won't buy from you because you don't meet the kinds of requirements that we have to meet our needs on a consistent kind of basis. Or you can't find enough people with certain kinds of qualifications and certifications to do X and Y with people, and if you can't have those certified people, we can't buy from you. I mean, there's a whole reason they can take you out of the game. No reason why they can bring you in. Does that make sense from a technical buyer's perspective? There's one other role here that I didn't put a slide on, but I think it's an important role. I mentioned it earlier, and that's the coach. The coach is someone who wants you to win for whatever reason. They like your product, they like you. If you can find that person in the buying organization that clues you into what's happening, who's who, they tell you who you have to talk to and what their biases are, you're a winner. That's your coach. When I was doing work for Keebler, I had a woman by the name of Mary T. Small. Mary T. worked in the market research department. She handled data. All she did was handle data. But every single goddamn project in the company needed data. And so, whether it was Nielsen reports or these reports or some other reports, Mary handled the data. And so she had access up and down the line to every single person in the company. And when anything was happening, what's the first thing people want? Do you have any data on this or that? I get a call from Mary telling me, Val, they're looking for data on this. I think there's a project with Rick. If you call Rick, there's getting something started over there. Why did Mary call me? Because she knew that if I came in on this thing, I would get married deeper into the data thing. She'd be involved in the project, kept into the project as a prime source, be invited to every meeting. So she was sitting in on all the meetings with the senior people all the time when we were doing presentations and preparation and everything. Because she was always the one that had to run out and get stuff. For her, she was at the top of the heap in terms of access to everybody. Could have lunch with all the senior people. And yet she was just, you know, probably the equivalent of someone who got a marketing degree and was, you know, had a bachelor's and wasn't any formal title in the company, but she had lots of status. And that was her win. And every time I won, she won. And that was my coach. And boy, that worked wonderful. And so you want to establish in any situation who your coach is going to be. Someone who wants you to win, they win when you win, and they're going to help you. They're not going to be able to buy from you, but they can help you understand what's going on into this complex buying situation. And that's really critical to help you get going. Let's take a look at some of this. You know, what you want to create is a flow diagram. Where does your product go? Who's involved? You need to put all of that kind of stuff together and do it in a flow chart to say, how does everything flow together in this organization that I want to sell to? And that would maybe for a customer segment. So if I'm dealing with farm customers, this is how organic farms operate, who plays what roles in there. Where does stuff come in? Where does it go out? How does it go out to the market? Because it's going to go out to the market differently than it will for an individual person who wants to do growing of your style. You need that for this kind of a thing for where your dental stuff goes. Almost, you know, yours may be a little less, maybe it's more complex, dealing in the public environment, quite frankly. Who's all involved? Who are all the players? What roles do they play? Who's for you? Who's against you? Who do you hurt? Who do you help? You want to flow diagram all that stuff so you have a map. When you can map it out cleanly and understand it, it'll help you with everything that you do. And you'll know that you understand the market a heck of a lot better. Because I noticed one of your sections is going to be your channels. All this ties back to channels too, doesn't it? Because you may have to sell to the end user through a channel, and to get to understand your end user, you have to understand how the channel reacts to them as well, and that whole process. So you want to flow diagram this if you can. Not all buying influences are equal. Where in the buyer organization would you have the most impact? Who's most knowledgeable? What are the personal impacts? And what are the politics of the buying organization? You guys need to know the politics of a university in order to pull your stuff off, don't you? Who reports to who? Who's fighting with who? All that stuff plays a role in, you know, how things work. And so that becomes critical to understand all of that. And, you know, you go into one dental group, it's one way, and go into another dental group, it's going to be a different way. And you're going to have to figure that out each time as you go to sell your stuff. Unless you start selling it through other means, I mean, you know, however you do it, go direct to start with. So your exercise, why don't we start with one individual customer that you can think of. Start putting in who the buying influences are. Put a name on it. This is Joe, this is Mary, this is somebody who's in that role, in that situation. You got the Merrimack Valley started. I mean, I was thinking, trying to think of United Way. Who in United Way would be the economic buyer, maybe, you know, if that's your buyer. Who are the users out there? parents use it, you know, kids use it. You got a whole list of different users. Who screens you out?